He's so kind. It's
Just like that, really.
bloody marvellous. Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
no worries.
On our left is Rosalind Park, named after Rosalind from Shakespeare's As You Like It. The park was opened in 1870. The Soldiers Memorial Hall on your left is built over what was once the main shaft of the Hustlers Royal Reserve mine, which for decades thundered away right here in the city. It mined the Great Hustlers Reef, one of the richest reefs ever discovered in Australia. Notice the life-size statue of Sir George Lancel holding a lump of quartz in his hand. George Lancel was known as Australia's quartz king, and although he came from humble beginnings, his passion for quartz mining made him Bendigo's richest and most respected citizen during the gold rush years. Former Sandhurst public offices were opened in 1887. Then, at Federation, became the Bendigo Post Office. Today, it is home to the city's visitor centre and the Post Office Gallery. Both the Post Office and the Bendigo Law Courts building we are now passing were designed by Major George Watson. To your left is the historic Conservatory Gardens. It's hard to imagine that in the 1960s the glass conservatory was marked for demolition, all in the name of progress. Ahead you will see the Gold Monument. This monument was erected in 1901 and depicts Fortuna, the mythical goddess of good luck, dropping the gold nugget into the pan of a digger. Bendigo is still to this day one of the richest goldfields in the world, and yielded over 700,000 kilograms of gold, worth approximately $38 million at today's prices. The gold rush attracted people from around the globe, including thousands of Chinese who came to Bendigo in search of prosperity. Bendigo's Chinese precinct is called Dai Gum San. It translates to Big Gold Mountain, as Bendigo was known to the first Chinese who settled in the region. The proud history of the Chinese is displayed in Bendigo's Golden Dragon Museum, the adjacent Yi Yuan Gardens, and the Kuan Yin Temple. At the museum, you can view Bendigo's famous Chinese dragons, Lung, the world's oldest, Sun Lung, formerly the world's longest imperial dragon, and Dai Gum Lung, Bendigo's newest and the world's longest dragon. The Bendigo Chinese Association display is a spectacular highlight of Bendigo's annual Easter Fair procession, which was established in 1871. Passing St Kenyon's Church. It is one of the largest churches in the Southern Hemisphere and was the fourth church to be built in Bendigo. St Kenyon's was initiated by the Catholic priest Reverend Dr. Henry Bacchus, a German immigrant who came to the goldfields in 1852. He was sometimes called Reverend because of the valuable properties he acquired in the early days. Upon his death in 1882, he left behind real estate value of more than £75,000, a huge sum in the day. The gold rush attracted people all over the world, led to Bendigo becoming a mixing pot of cultures. The area we're now entering is originally and even officially known as Irish Town because of the very large number of Irish diggers camped nearby. The street to our right is Tramways Avenue, at the end of which is located the Bendigo Tramways Depot and workshops. Our first trams were battery powered and operated by the Sandhurst and East Fork Electric Tramway Company, which began running in 1890. The battery technology was in its infancy back then, and the trams constantly broke down. As a result, the battery company went into liquidation after only 13 weeks. In 1892, steam trams were brought in, and the old battery trams were converted into trailers for them to tow. Finally, in 1903, electric trams were introduced and have been running ever since. A short drive straight ahead is the Bendigo Botanic Gardens, and a little further on, the Bendigo Pottery. Both should be on your to-do list if you're spending time in Bendigo. Bendigo Pottery is Australia's oldest working pottery. Established in 1858, pottery was operated continuously from the current site in Epsom since 1863. It is home to the most significant collection of ceramic wood-fired kilns left in the world. Today, the pottery complex includes an interpretive museum, artist studios, and an extensive antique centre. For those who like getting their hands dirty, the daily wheel throwing lessons are highly recommended. We're about to turn into Nolan Street. This section of track was added during World War II to take workers by tram to the Commonwealth Ordnance Factory in North Bendigo. World War II reduced the number of men available to work to such an extent that the tramways were forced to offer conductor positions to women. By the end of the war, there were 22 women employed on the trams. However, they had to relinquish their positions when the men returned from service. Next stop, Lake Maroona. If you're getting off here, please mind the step and use the handrail as you leave the tram from the right-hand side.
Got a couple minutes before we head off again. happened was the Minister of Transport at the time, Victoria, said, we're going to give you a tram to Adelaide New Zealand. And the guys here heard that. They raced down from their shops and everything back to the tram depot. They locked the gates. They parked all the cars around the gates. They started the bar, wrapped one of the trams, and the truck driver, as he left, he heard about it, he turned around and went back to South Australia. And then the sort of thing to the fight at the time, because the minister promised, to South Australia to have these trams and all the rest of it. And we ended up buying all the trams for $1. And so after that, we started running as a family. And so we're only on about a quarter of the original track now. So beforehand at the fountain, we used to go either way, all the way out to the port. Our first trams that we had, they were battery operated trams, and then they didn't really work too well with the hills, so by the time they got out to Eagle Hawk, they got brought back by horse. Then they decided to convert them carriages to the tram, and that too, everyone gave up on that idea because it got too many big fires and all the horses are on. And so in 1903, they put the overhead wire system in, and we've had our trams going like that ever since. It's a pretty good year, that was the year the Wright brothers' first flight, and all the rest of them, Bendigo with their own trams, the overhead wire. Alrighty. Time to go.
As we cross the Bendigo Creek, you will notice the bed of the creek is paved with bluestone. Over 100 years ago, the city councillors were forced to pave the creek in order to prevent slime and mud soaking in and inundating the city. As a result, thousands of miners using their pumping machines further up the valley. We're now entering Bridge Street. In the 1950s, tram travel was a very affordable option for Bendigo families. A one-way fare to anywhere in town was the equivalent of 5 cents. Tram travel was reliable too, and many drivers prided themselves on running their services on the dot. People who lived along the tram route would often set their clocks by the time the tram rattled past their door and rang its bell. As they travelled along Bendigo streets, the tram is used to ring the gong at regular intervals to let people know the tram was coming. It was a common sight to see people running along the street with a piece of toast in one hand and combing their hair with the other. We're now approaching the Tysons Reef precinct. If you wish to get off here, please pull the left-hand bell cord once, mind the step, and use the handrail to leave the tram. Tysons Reef is one of 17 quartz reefs run beneath the city in roughly a south-to-east direction, covering an area of 16 kilometres long and 4 kilometres wide. In excess of 5,000 shafts were sunk throughout the mining history of Bendigo, which represents the largest concentration of deep shafts anywhere in the world. We're now heading into Caledonia Street, which leads to the former Commonwealth Ordnance Factory, or Tallis, as it is known today. It was built during the Second World War and is a world leader in defence, aerospace, ground transportation solutions. The tramways used to provide special services to bring workers from all parts of Bendigo to the factory. During the war, the work was top secret, and all sorts of weapons for the forces in Europe and the islands were manufactured here. Since then, the factory has continued its role manufacturing the Bushmaster, an armoured patrol and combat support vehicle. These highly reliable vehicles serve with distinction in Afghanistan, Iraq and other areas of conflict. Next stop is the Bendigo Joss House Temple. This Chinese place of worship was constructed in the 1870s and is one of the few remaining original buildings of its type in Australia. It is constructed with locally handmade bricks and painted red, symbolising happiness, strength and vitality. The Joss House remains a place of worship and is regularly visited by worshippers who travel quite some distance to pay their respects to one being, the god of war and prosperity, to whom the temple is dedicated. Check with the driver or conductor about the Joss House opening hours, and if you are getting off here, please mind the step, use the handrail, and leave the tram from the right-hand side.